financing partner. And because I've got this partner, they've taken away the pain of worrying about cash flow. Then you can focus on what you really need to do. I would recommend Lululend at any point in time.
Dex Prepare. Make bookkeeping more profitable. Prepare your accounts automatically. Hours saving software to automatically fetch all your business data into one single view. Connect to over 1,400 suppliers to automatically fetch invoices, statements and bills. Dex Prepare.
Receipts snapped, expenses captured, job done.
Own business admin with our financial tools.
Hello and welcome everybody to the latest in the Business Finance Bootcamp series. Today we're going to be talking about building the right tech stack to make your business more efficient and ultimately drive growth. I'm Tom Stewart, Chief Marketing Officer at Lululend, and today's topic is one of the reasons why we're so excited at Lululend to be a part of this Business Finance Bootcamp series. As a fintech business, we relied on a technology-first approach to make it faster and easier for SMEs in South Africa to access funding. And as a result, we've experienced firsthand how using the power of technology in smart ways can really help you disrupt a market in positive ways and ultimately achieve success. So I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for today's conversation. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to today's host, Willem from Go-Getters Accounting, to get us started. Willem, over to you.
Tom, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. I'm super excited to be here today because we're talking about something that's really close to my heart, and that's the whole topic around the tech stack. And one of the reasons is because the business that I co-founded operates fully in the cloud. We're tech heavy, we paperless, and we don't operate from a single building where everybody has to get together. So we absolutely rely on our own tech stack to make sure our business operates in the way that we've intended for it. And so I'm super excited that today I'm joined by two, if I can call them tech stack experts, and I'm sure they're going to come up with their own descriptions. I would love to introduce you guys to Irit Levi and Cor Schutte. They're going to be discussing with me today the whole concept around tech stack. And one of the things that gets me excited about business is the fact that one can actually go and create your own white canvas and do what you want so long as you've got a plan. In my mind, if your plan leads you to help you grow your sales, make a profit, and generate cash flow, it's a good plan. And so the tech stack is one of those building blocks I believe one needs in a business today and in the future to help you do that more efficiently. Irit, Cor, good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Hi, how you doing?
Afternoon.
I'm so glad, and thank you guys for joining me. Irit, I'm going to kick off with you. I see that your business is called Day by Day. Very interesting. And I would love you to just briefly introduce yourself and tell us about Day by Day. Why Day by Day and what does it mean?
So Day by Day is actually a business reference. It's a biblical reference, sorry. It's when the people of Israel were in the desert and they collect the manna. They were getting their food day by day. And I think that's how we run our businesses. We run them day by day, running after, hopefully not running, but, trying to get our income and what we can live off of. And that's what I do. I help small businesses and I help them map their workflows and then improve them and implement and automate them so that they can have time to spend that money doing stuff they love.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And once again, thanks for joining us today. Cor, over to you, and I know you've joined some of the previous episodes of this bootcamp. I'm very happy that you are joining here today, and tell us about Pretty Simple. I love the name, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. Hello, everybody. So I'm part of an automation agency based out of Cape Town. Where it's quite chilly out here at the moment, so I'm wearing my coat. We're based out of Cape Town. We've been doing low-code business automation for the last 6 years. So basically, we're not developers. We work with off-the-shelf apps and connect them together. And in essence, what we do is we help clients plan, implement, and then integrate the right apps for their business with the objective of automating that at the in the end. Yeah, so it's pretty simple.
Awesome. Love how it rolls off the tongue. So let's get started, guys. What is a tech stack? I've used the term, we hear it all the time. I'm sure people want to know, what is a tech stack? Irit, what do you think?
So a tech stack is all of the software that a company uses in order to get their processes and their work going. Anything that they need, from a simple Gmail account, that's part of your tech stack, until complex automations and integrations that Core could, talk about for hours, and I could too. So yeah, that's the basics.
How would you define a tech stack, Core?
I think it starts with that, and I agree with Irit. But I found so in the space that we're in terms of automation, it also goes wider. So it includes things like your payment gateways, whether you use in South Africa, whether you use SnapScan or PayFast or one of those, which might not be seen as a traditional app. But it might also go further in terms of which hosting do you use to run your website on. It might include which VoIP, so voice over IP service you provide, because you can run, you can use that to support your business. So yes, apps, but it might actually, I was actually thinking earlier, so it'd be interesting to hear how the actual hardware that you run your stuff on might be included. It's not just app stack, but tech stack, how that impacts your business and processes.
Cool. Yeah, so you've now mentioned app stack, tech stack. And look, guys, I'm an accountant. I'm not actually an engineer or into tech. All the stuff that I know, I've taught myself. I always thought app stack and tech stack's the same thing. What's the difference?
I also there's no formal definition. I'm not aware of, and I very seldom use a formal definition. It's whatever technology you can use to support your business. I very much see technology as an enabler and a support of your business and your processes. As Irit was saying, in terms of running your business and in terms of whatever help you can find, whether that's in the form of a laptop or something hardware or an app that runs on the cloud, whatever helps you run it day by day.
Nice. Actually, if I may, you were saying before about hardware. Until I opened my business, I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't have WhatsApp. My smartphone has now become like the hardware, the apps that are on it. Yes, but I need the phone so that I can do my work anytime, anywhere, regardless of the situation. And that's a piece of hardware that I didn't have before. So
now, if you consider something that's I come across quite often, is if you run a retail business and your point of sale system. So some of the legacy systems, if you like, required specific hardware to be installed, and you had to run these very complicated leasing programs to get a hold of that hardware, and you tied yourself into a 6-year plan in order to afford that. And some of the newer apps run off any tablet that you can find. And you can run it from there. So it definitely has an impact. Even the other example I can think of is in warehousing. So before, if you had to do an inventory run or inventory check, or even in a smaller retail business, you had to have these specialized devices, or you were stuck on counting on paper. Now you can actually build and find very cool solutions that run on 700 or 800 Rand Android devices that you buy at your local PEP stores.
That's a big deal, right? Because, and I think maybe it's one of the things we can touch upon, especially larger businesses at some point, have always had to worry about maintaining a very, very expensive server. And the server would be the place where you would store all of your data. And now if you have your own server, you have to worry about all the physical security around keeping that thing safe, but more so the data that's on there, keeping that secure, keeping backups. It's many people, I don't think, always realize all the costs that are associated with maintaining your own server. And so moving to the cloud can actually help you overcome that problem. So I'm a business owner. You guys are business owners, right? And for the business owners out there, what other convincing information can we provide to convince them to move to the cloud? I mean, why? Why not keep a server? Why not keep my own hardware?
I think there's so many reasons why not. At cost wise, if you were talking about keeping the server safe, if your server goes down, you're going to need support staff that's there whenever your employees are working. And as we're turning more remote and people are working all over the world, you're going to need someone 24/7. And then take into account also that you need your servers to be strong enough. You know, if you have a mini server, then and you have 300 people working on it, it's going to crash. So you're going to want to have, it's going to cost you so much more to host it on a private server than it is to put it in the cloud. You have access to it anytime, anywhere, any device, and it's there, it's at your fingertips. Yes, you can, they probably, whatever cloud you're using, you should make sure that they have backups as well, just because it's on them, but it's on you at the end of the day. But you want to make sure that they have the backups, and if you want to back it up locally, that's fine, but know that that's a backup, and it's there just in case. And also, like you were saying, security reasons. I mean, you have health companies, they need to be HIPAA compliant, and you want all this stuff of compliancy, and you can't always keep up to date with the last trends of compliancy. And when you're working with a company that's what they do, they have a team that's what they do. So again, you're saving money by not having to hire someone to make sure your servers are compliant for whatever needs that you need.
But Corey, if most people out there are like I am, and I like to maintain control, how secure is my stuff? If I hand over the keys to my data to somebody somewhere else in virtual space or in the world, how do I maintain control?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I would trust is because it might sound stupid, but there are millions others that trust them compared to my local network provider or my local IT guy that I found on a Facebook group. And no, like they're needed, no insult meant. Yeah, so it's tried and tested. It could be one of the reasons. But just if I can latch onto what Eric was saying. I had something this morning where I had to move files or records for a client. I had to move 500,000 records for a client. They were based on Google Cloud, and I could scale up the infrastructure while I was moving the records. And as soon as I was done, I moved them down. It cost me a couple of cents, US cents, to do. If you had to do that, and I was able to complete the task in this morning, whereas in the old days, my understanding was that you were stuck with the infrastructure that you had, the servers that you had, or you had to go out and buy a new one just to scale up this morning's run, and then you were stuck with the so flexibility is a key example. Just the other thing Eric was saying, maybe a tip. I learned the hard way that Google doesn't back up your data. I don't know if you know. So you actually have to, there's third-party providers that then back up your Google data. So yes, while they run very secure services and it's very hard to get into, but if someone gets hold of your passwords and they run havoc inside there, Google doesn't have backups of those services. And for you to get that back, you would need to have access to third-party service providers. So it brings, so yes, I think there are some security and scaling benefits, but it does also bring its own new set of challenges that come with it. Main reason for me would be, if you look at costs, it's highly flexible. You can start very small, very cheap, compared to literally fractions of what it will cost you to go out and buy a server. And then it can scale seasonally depending on what you need to do. What Eric was saying, yes, you can access local servers anywhere, but it's much easier to do once it's cloud hosted. And your options, I think you're not stuck to whatever your local suppliers can provide. It's like online shopping for IT systems.
We're starting to hit a few interesting nerves, because I can see some of the questions coming through, and it's great because they're already anticipating what we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. But one of the things that really makes me excited about living and working in the cloud is the fact, let's say my laptop gets stolen. Because I don't save anything on a server or on my own laptop, I can literally go to the nearest store, buy a new laptop, I switch it on. I'll maybe put a new password in because I want to personalize it. But then I can just plug and play as soon as I get an internet connection, and I can continue as if nothing has happened. So for me, that's probably one of the biggest benefits, given where my business is at the moment. And I think that point that you made about the flexibility is super important. I think any business owner will understand the importance of being nimble and having that flexibility so that they can react to difficult situations. So what should all of that cost? Let's get, I think that's the elephant in the room, right? And many times we have discussions with clients that are working on legacy systems. They hear about the cloud, they got to move, they want to move, but they don't know how. But the one big barrier is, why should they pay more per month than what they're paying for at the moment? Irit, let's start with you.
Well, I think Chris said this before. I actually think that the cloud is cheaper than it is. Not just the servers that you were talking about before, Cora. I mean, definitely, if I want to set up servers, that's going to cost me more. But I do everything on the cloud. Honestly, my expenses are very minimal, because if we're talking tech stack, you're paying $5 for this and $12 a month for that and $20 a month, and it adds up. It adds up at the end of the month. You're paying, $350, and you're like, where did that come from? But it doesn't have to be, because as a small business, there are a lot of tools out there that you can use as freemium. They put things in the cloud. You're not even feeling it, just for file. You don't want to use Google. Let's say Dropbox as an example for where to save your files. And Core's smiling. I know he's going to have what to say about that. But, let's say you want to put your files in Dropbox. They give you a free account for a certain amount. It's limited, but, there are ways around it. You can use it for free. It doesn't cost that much. The cost of working in the cloud is not expensive if you're wise about it, if you think about it, if you plan it. And then as you grow, the amount of space that you need in the cloud grows with you. So you only spend what you need. And hopefully, as you're growing, your business is growing as well. So you're getting more income and you can afford to pay for those extensions.
If you'll allow me, before I ask Core to comment on that, I want to try and break down what you just said in something that I can understand, right? So if I'm a new business, as the owner, I'm going to start to do most of the things in the business myself from day one, right? So I'll be the CEO, I'll be the HR manager, I'll be the salesperson, I'll be the accountant, I'll be everything, because that's what I can afford.
You lady.
So as my business scales up, I would need to start to employ people. Now, the most difficult barrier for any business person doing that is, it's very difficult to find pieces of people that can help you do what you need to do on a piecemeal basis. You have to actually employ a full-time person.
Well, I'm going to argue with you on that, because in this world, in this day and age,
I'm trying to, because that's what most people think, right?
Okay.
And that's the challenge, because you think you're going to have to step up to that amount of additional investment and cost every single month in order to scale. And that's what I think I heard you say in terms of, it's not expensive to operate in the cloud, because with those apps, you can actually start to buy pieces of functionality that can help you free up your hands so that you can continue to make progress in your business. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, it's the cloud, but then you're also getting to the people, which we'll get to later. But if you want an accountant, you don't need a full-time accountant. If you're using Sage or Xero or whatever, I'm not going to mention more, but if you're using any accountant tool, and there are certain things that you can do on your own, and then as you scale up, you hand it over to a bookkeeper or full-fledged accountant, and then they'll take you on for X amount of time, and they have access to your files in the cloud without you having to pass over anything. It's not more expensive. You're not paying more, usually for the first 1 or 2 users, you're not paying more to give them access. But then again, if you're at the stage where you're scaling and you need to give your accountant access and you need to buy another license, pay to get them on the cloud, that means you're growing. That's a good sign.
That's awesome. Cool. What is your view on the cost angle?
I was just something, having run a small business that employed a few people before, it's much easier to fire an app. Just saying that. And then maybe a word of warning. I think we spoke about it before, but it's not only the license fees that need to be considered. So when we talk about costs, it's the time that you would invest. So you were saying, you as a business owner, installing the app and setting that up and running all of this stuff, you would need to consider if you need help, what it'll cost to do the help, and then the operating costs, so the licenses and potentially hosting or anything like that. What does it cost? It depends. If it's, I love what Eric was saying. So the really good thing is there's so many free apps and free solutions and free licenses out there. And because it's such a competitive space, I saw somebody out there on the chat posting, there's so much tech out there. So because it's such a competitive space, the free options are really competitive, especially in some of the key solutions where there are multiple players targeting the same market. It really makes it possible to set up your business on a shoestring. Obviously, as soon as you start scaling and you start making money, somebody's going to want a piece of it. Hopefully by then you're a little bit more savvy and you've learned a little bit about the apps and what functionality is really important, and you can then scale the important ones. It's as you learn, as your business grows and as you learn about your business, you would probably identify the functionality that's important and you want to focus on those. It's definitely not necessary to buy the top license for all of the apps that you're on, and it's definitely not required for you to buy licenses for every single person that will be using the app. You can, and I love doing that, mixed licenses. So I have paid licenses and for some people and run the free licenses for those that don't need the paid ones.
Let's get into a potential objection here, right? So I've heard many business owners say, my business is too unique. It can't operate in the cloud. I need physical computers. I need my server, or I'm in various locations. I've heard them all. You know, what did you guys say to that? How do you convince a business owner that says they are too unique to go into the cloud?
I would say so. South Africa, so it does have its challenges, right? So South Africa connectivity can be a challenge. Load shedding is a challenge all around, so having stuff in the cloud that while you're load shed, you just need to run a local UPS. Most fiber providers are online while we're being load shed, but it might be a challenge. I wouldn't say. I've not come across a business that's so unique that they can't run something in the cloud. It'd be interesting. Maybe somebody can post some examples in the chat that we could can test that hypothesis. But I think maybe it is it's finding the right. So firstly, it's I think I'm not an advocate to necessarily run your entire business on the cloud. I definitely acknowledge that there are some parts of the business that might not make sense to run on the cloud and run locally. But having some form of cloud presence or support or activity is I think beneficial for most, if not all, businesses. So it's not just cloud. I think it's the app stack, and that can be on both legs. Maybe running on. I'm not a fan of a local server because it's a pain to run, but it might be on a local desktop or something like that. Yeah, over to you, Eric.
So Eric, I'm a business owner, and I come to you and I say, I've tried it before. I've used a couple of apps. It didn't work. So that's it for me. I'm out. What would you say to that?
But there's no, I've used a couple of apps, I'm out. If we haven't found the right app for you, we'll find an app that works. I mean, again, in just the finance world, there's so many, and there's so many definitions of what can and can't use, depending on your business, depending on where it's registered. If it's registered in the US, if it's in South Africa, if it's, in Israel where I am, they're different what apps I can use. Just everybody pays with PayPal and Stripe. I can't use Stripe. I can't use Stripe from where I am. They don't integrate with me. But that doesn't mean, I can't use Stripe. That's it. I can't accept online payments. Nobody can pay me online. It doesn't work that way, right? So there are always things that you can put in the cloud. And I highly recommend doing anything that you can, definitely as, I don't want to say a backup because that should be your primary, but definitely as a backup as well. I mean, one of the tools that I regularly use just now came out with a desktop app. And I was thinking, why do I need a desktop app? I don't need it. I'm online anyway. I'm on the browser anyway. It works so smoothly. Why would I try? So I did try, by the way.
So you mentioned something. So what I really appreciate, especially over the last couple of years, are apps specializing in specific features for specific industries, and then having an open architecture. So having the ability to speak to other apps, speak to and from other apps. Obviously, that's how kind of where we play. And so to your point, both Eric and Willem, it's not finding that one app that does everything your business does it exactly as you want it to do. It's finding those specific apps that have the functionality and features that you need, that do it, if not exactly as you would like to do it, or very closely, and then potentially connecting them together to build an app stack, build an environment that supports your business across the value chain, or across the life cycle, or the processes, or the steps in your business that you use to serve clients. So it's finding those apps that deliver it as closely as possible to what your desired step would be.
So let's delve into that phrase that you just mentioned, finding the apps, because I think there's thousands of apps out there. Where do you start? How do you know it's the best app to use? And what if I make a bad app decision and now I'm disappointed, and can I change? I mean, it's a minefield.
There is no one best app for anything in any way, and any app that tells you we're the best in is just, I don't know what measurements they're looking at, but based on whatever measurements, I can look at others and find, proof another way. It is what is the app.
Can I cut you short there for a moment? I want to just remind everybody on Online X, there's a couple of Versus webinar series. So if you want to disagree on there's a best app for something, go and search for it. I'm not going to mention names, but remember the Versus series.
Absolutely, that's a great series. And I've lost my train of thought. But the thing is, the apps, you try out an app, and because most of these, or a lot of them, have freemium or they have a free trial, you try it out, you test to see if it works in your workflow, you test integrations. You said, how do I know what app is right for me? And Core sort of touched on this before. The first thing I do, or one of the first things I do, even before pricing, when I look at an app, is I check its native and its outgoing third-party integrations. I want to see if it talks to my other apps. And that's the one thing that I think is the most important when you're building your tech stack. Make sure your applications, and even your hardware, but definitely your applications, are talking to each other. Make sure the data from one can go to another. If it's native, right? Like it's built in. Native means like within, this is what Core was talking about before. It's part of the original app. Then absolutely, that's the best idea. That's ideal, because that's been tested and that it's seamless. But if not, there are so many integrators on that, and Core and I will not do a Versus series here, but there's so many integrators out there that can connect different apps. And one of my favorite things when I'm choosing an app is to go to my integrator of choice and go, I need a course writing platform. Let's see what course writing platforms integrate with this tool. And then I'll go and I'll check them out. So I'll start from my integrating tool and see what they offer. That's like a good starting point for me.
What you've just said is super useful, and especially in terms of the integrations. And I want to quickly stop there for a moment. It sounds like there's two types of paths one can follow. There's an app that has an integration, which means it can already talk to other apps, but there's those who don't have it. So let's first answer the question, Core, maybe you can help me with this one. Why is it important for apps to be able to integrate? Why do we want these apps to share data? And especially with Poppy, is that a risk? And sorry, Eric, Poppy is our local version of the protection of data in South Africa, which actually became effective today. So maybe Core, can you unpack this whole issue about the integrations for us?
Yeah, so I actually want to maybe challenge. I think there's three types. So the one has the native integrations. The one has something that can speak to others, but it doesn't do it kind of as a standard. And then there's the third type, which I hate, which doesn't play well with anything. And I try and avoid at all costs. So remind me your question. Sorry, Willem.
Why is it important? I've got a
cool. Yeah.
I know I need email. I know I need accounting. Why do I want these apps to talk to one another? What's the point?
Anybody that's ever worked on Excel that had to have Excel sheet open on the one and a platform on the other that had to copy data would love integration. So basically, the point is instead of somebody having a junior person or an admin person somewhere sitting manually copying data information from one point to another, whether that's a web application form onto your order system, or whether it's a copying your bank statement lines onto your accounting platform, or whether it's just at any point where you're Control C, which means copy, and Control V to paste something elsewhere, you should be looking for alternatives to replace to do that automatically. In terms of data, so security, Willem, it'll be irresponsible for me to say that it's completely not a risk, but these, especially the integration platforms and the apps, have security solutions in place to safeguard your data. I trust them more again than my own capability. Again, the fact that there are millions out there using it, and that are smarter than I am at these things, and trust them with that should be a good sign. Irit was mentioning earlier, having specialists in their team that focused on data security and data privacy, and making sure that they adhere to the latest and greatest GDPR and HIPAA and all of the international compliance, not just PAPAIA in South Africa, is at least gives me some peace.
I just want to add one more type. I know you said 3, but there's actually one more. They're the all-in-one tools. Those that say that they can do everything. See the face that Cora's making. That's the response. Those all-in-one tools, they do everything okay, but they're not specializing in anything. So if
they notoriously don't play well with anything else.
Exactly. It's really hard to get the data from them. And Cora was saying before about how, and Willem, you asked about this. If I don't like the app that I'm using, I will change the app. But if I am in an all-in-one app and now I want to change, now I'm thinking, so do I need 5 other apps, or do I need to find a different all-in-one app? And, and you're never going to get the same level of service in whatever service of the all-in-one you're looking for as you are with someone who's that's all they do. If you go to a company that all they do is landing pages, you're going to get a very high level quality of service and ability and capabilities of landing pages, rather than a site that does all kinds of things and also landing pages. That's just as an example.
So when you spoke about choosing apps, so my first thing is also to check whether they're cloud-based, because I can get into cloud-based, and secondly is whether they have the ability to speak to and from them, whichever mechanism works. I tend to have a list of the features that I want before I go to the app. So I think that's important, so that you can validate. If you rely on an app to tell you how to run your business, I think it's a dangerous space to be. And then the cost, but something that came up recently is support. So something that I now intentionally look at, because I've run into problems where we've spent weeks implementing an app for a customer. Something goes wrong, and then the support from that app provider is just non-existing, to the point where I have a hypothesis that the people that market, there's a correlation between their marketing budget and their support budget. So the people that market a lot doesn't necessarily have a good support line. So be careful. So when you add that to your list, if you're investing a lot of time and a lot of money into an app, test their support channels, test their support procedures, because you will need it at some point. And it's a painful point to face.
Yeah. Also, if it's not the support for testing, and also you mentioned that you have the features that you want. Not everybody's going to know a feature that they want, especially if they're not tech oriented like you and I. But they do know a workflow. So take one workflow that you do, something that a set of tasks that you know that you're going to use this application for, and run it through the app as you're testing it before you commit to it. See how easy it is to set it up. See how easy it is to ask for help from support. Absolutely. But play with it before you commit to it. That's what the trial period is for. And don't let that trial period run away from you. You have, some of them are freemiums, but some have like 14 days. So you could probably ask for another 14. Most companies will give you more time if you ask for it. But if you're not testing during those 14 days, you're not really using that time wisely, and you won't really know. And then you'll have to commit to some sort of money. And then if you don't like it, you'll have to cancel. So we're talking cost again. It's an endless cycle.
So another top tip. Most banks now provide you the ability to create free virtual cards. So when signing up to an app, especially if it's new, so have a card that you run trials on, and then have a virtual card so that when you cancel, some of these apps are notoriously bad at being very hard to cancel. So you don't want to then have to cancel your business card. You can then just cancel your virtual card, and they have to come after you for the money, as opposed to you trying to get a refund from them.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, this all sounds pretty simple, right? And for you guys on a day-by-day basis, that's what you do. You guys know about all these apps. You know what each can do. How can we make it practical for business owners? So where do they start? I mean, we still have thousands of apps out there. Which one is the best? And I don't think we are here today to name specific apps to say these are the apps you should use. There's just too many. Where would you guys start? How would you advise a business owner? Iris.
So my theory is that every single business owner, no matter what area they're in, is going to need finances. You want to have a way to pay your vendors and to get paid by your customers, right? So everybody needs finances. Everybody needs, a way to put out invoices and a payment processing tool and whatever. So, and that's defined by your country. That's defined, like I said before, by your financial entity and whatever. But that's a great place to start, because you're going to need that for sure. And ideally, I mean, in an ideal world where you can afford it, you hand that over to an accountant and they do it for you, and they tell you, well, this is the tool that I use, and that's fine. But small businesses don't have the money to pay for an accountant at first. I had zero budget when I started my company. I paid an accountant to open the entity just because it was too complex. But other than that, I did everything on my own. And so I looked at any tools that had a freemium version at first for finances. But I also, I didn't like the freemium versions, and I needed something that integrated with the tax system in my country, knowing that once I get used to it, I'm not like Core. I tend to be loyal to an app. I mean, yes, I'll pass them over, but I tend to stay with an app. Once I love it forever. And it's very hard to get me off of it. It's doable, but it's very hard. So I wanted something that spoke with the tax entity in the tax systems in my country. So I couldn't check out. There are a lot of apps that I couldn't look into that are actually very useful in South Africa, but for me, they weren't even open. And so I knew what my limitations were, and I went for something that was free at first, even if I didn't love it. And then I kept looking until I found something that I liked. And now I'm going to move. Shh, don't tell.
Cool. Where would you start if somebody comes to you and they want to move to the cloud? What are your first 3 steps that you would recommend?
So I have a discussion with them about the steps in their process and their workflow, right? So have an idea of the steps that you follow with your customer, or if it's the finance side, what you follow on the finance, or whether it's marketing or HR or recruitment, or whichever the step is that you're looking at. So map those steps, or document or write down those steps, and then identify, look at key steps that is either done by a really expensive resource that gets done very often, or that is very frustrating for a customer that you want to make it easier for them. And then for those steps, look for a solution. So when I say look for, that can be Google. Is often Irit, your integration platform that will not be mentioned is also my source of. So if this platform can speak to the app, then it's highly likely that it's open. So there are some, so Zapier or Integromat or one of these platforms that you can look at. They have very good classifications of the app. So you would ask for a payroll app and they'll list all 60 payroll apps that are open, or you'll ask for a marketing app or an SMS app and they'll list that, and that's a good place to start. And then before I commit to any apps, I literally just go through their features. So the questions: are they cloud-based? Are they open? Can you speak to them? What are the feature sets in there? And then what's the pricing? And then based on those, choose one to start with, open an account, kick it around, like Garrett was saying, play around with it, and don't commit on the first one that you try. Move to the next one, move to the next one, move to the next one, and then choose one to start with. That's pretty much the process that I follow. The other option is communities. I think we haven't mentioned that before. There are so many communities, active communities with people that can give you advice on apps that they use and pitfalls in some of these apps. So definitely look out for those also.
So I know for my business, and guys, you have to forgive me. I'm an accountant by training and by nature, and so I naturally started with a kick-ass cool accounting app, which was my digital accounting platform of choice. And I think I added 2 or 3 other apps around that, pretty much along the same lines you've suggested, like can it integrate, which was the most important thing. What's the support like, and are the basic features sufficient for me? And I found that worked very well for me. And later on, as I scaled, I started using more apps as I realized that certain things in the business starts to create a hindrance for me to move forward. So I think I heard you suggest, Cor, that the 80-20 principle is normally a good place to start. That, identify the things that takes the most time to do with the least amount of return once you've done it, and see if there's a level of automation one can build in through the use of apps, or maybe improving your processes, or maybe moving your people around in a better way, so that you can get maximum return on the investment in those resources. So yeah,
I do want to just add. So it's not just, don't just look at volume, right? So one of the things people do is look at the things that happen most often. I focus. In my own business, I automate the stuff that I hate most, that steals my joy. So it might also be what the valuable resources in my business. I'm valuable to myself. So what the valuable resources do, and how you keep them focusing on the stuff that's really important. So don't just focus on something that happens frequently. It might also be just something that's really painful or time consuming to do that really should be simple.
Right. And also something, just to add, something that has human error. Like if you're doing data, nobody should be doing data entry manually anymore. Yes. That's just passe. Nobody should be doing that data entry.
I totally agree. In fact, I would like to take that a step further and aggravate that and say nobody deserves to be doing manual data.
Well, I think politicians might need to do that.
Oh, yeah. Let's move on very quickly. I want to quickly touch on the zaps that you were throwing at each other there. Excuse the pun. Let's talk quickly about Integromat and Zapier. And this is not a versus series, but just quickly unpack the concept behind those 2 apps, what they do, and why you guys are so passionate about them.
So basically, the way that this works is you define a trigger, something that happens, and that causes an action. And so what Zapier or Integromat will do is they'll get a signal, and there are other tools as well. There's Segment.io and whatever. There are a lot of tools. Not promoting anyone, but they'll take the trigger from whatever app you're in. It's like an invoice was paid, right? That's the trigger. Anytime an invoice is paid, and then it will send it to one of those third-party integrators, and then we can define what action we want. We can send an email to the person who paid it. I mean, again, that could probably do it from within the app, but you could take that data and put it into your CRM. You could take that data and now go to your shipper and automatically tell your shipper, okay, that was paid. So now, we're ready for print on demand or whatever. Like, again, it depends on your workflow, but the idea is the trigger causes an action, and it's usually in 2 different applications. So you're connecting 2 different applications, and a trigger in one causes an action in the other.
And so if I understand correctly, we've got apps like Dext, they specialize in the automation of data capture, because we said nobody deserves to capture data manually. And so once it's captured the data, it's got an automatic integration into some of the other accounting apps, so that the moment you publish that process transaction, it automatically repurposes the data in the accounting system. And that way you can eliminate the need for somebody to do manual data capture. So what I'm hearing you say is these integrated tools like Zapier, Integromat, they are very useful for those apps that actually don't have those native integrations, but you still want to find a way for them to talk to one another, or at least share data so that you can help fasten your processes. Is that correct, Gordon? Sorry, Irit?
Yes. Go ahead, Irit.
I was just going to say, just for what Willem said, sorry about that. It's just like, there are a lot of accountants here, or people that are using Excel still. Just you putting in data into an Excel sheet and that causing a whole slew of other actions happening based on that Excel sheet. And you're not doing anything. You're just typing a row and it's causing other things to happen. I mean, that's very simple in integration and automation, but it's one of the most useful for small businesses.
So, Cor, can you give us an example quickly? I know you do some of your own personal invoicing using such an automated process. Just quickly explain that to us so we can make this practical for the people listening.
I want to add two things to Irit and then comment on yours, and then I'll give a practical example. So Irit, I think the other thing that Zapier and Integromat does is conditions. So you can actually, if it's this thing, send it there, or if it's that thing, do that. And then they do transformational enrichment. So you can actually combine two data sets together and then send it to your CRM or whatever the case might be. So you can actually enrich your data, transform or enrich the data from that, which is super useful. Things just off the top of my mind, like validating phone numbers, getting addresses in a standard format, things like that. My personal favorite is get a random joke to include in an email. So that's two things. Willem, to your point, so I shared Irit's view that no two businesses are the same, and they are unique. Not so unique that they don't need the cloud, but they are different. And so I value the ability to create my own automations. So the next one, I might want to only trigger this at certain occasions, or I might want to enrich this in somehow. So yes, by all means, have the standard integrations, but also give me the ability to change that if my business functions slightly different, and they can add value. Example, I provide support to our customers. I have a ticketing system, pretty standard ticketing system, but basically every time I touch or work for a client, I would book time to that ticket system. The next day, the client would get an email to say, your support balance for the month is this. If you want to query this, just click on this button and I'll phone them immediately after that. And then at the end of the month, I have an automation that runs that convert that balance into an invoice to the client and send that. So I mentioned earlier the stuff I hate to do. Invoicing is one of them. It used to keep me busy trying to figure that out. And my entire support invoicing system is automated, which has saved me a tremendous amount of time. And I think more importantly, my customers value. There's no surprises come end of the month. They know exactly where it is. And I get to have those important conversations with the client around support costs and support what I'm doing early on, rather than waiting till the end of the month or waiting until they haven't paid for a month and a half and then querying my support invoice.
That's absolutely brilliant. And so I mean, that's a great example where even though there aren't apps available to do exactly what you've just described, you've used technology that's already in the cloud to help you achieve that by understanding what the steps are that you want to automate, what the problem is you're trying to solve, and what kind of beautiful, hassle-free customer experience you want to create. And those are all awesome ingredients, I think, for beautiful business. So let's move on to some of the questions. I see we've got about 11 minutes left for the afternoon, and there's just so much more I want to discuss. There's a question from Luther Diderix. I love the concept. Who can I contact to explore and implement in my organization, as well as those that I consult to? Yes, great question. And I think both Irit and Cor would be the best people for you to contact. I think that's the service they both offer. And they are both app integrators, if you will. They understand the world of apps. And yeah, you cannot go wrong. But I'm sure if you go onto the internet and Google app integrators, you will come right. Let's see. A question. There's so much tech out there. A few dollars here and every month it adds up. How can I keep the costs down? Do you guys want to make any further comments on that point?
I want people to understand that that's a very, very valid point, and we're not even aware of it. Oh yeah, I'll just buy an email service provider. Oh yeah, I'll just buy a project management tool. Wait, I'll switch to this project management tool, but I won't cancel that one. Oh, my trial ended, but I had to give a credit card. Never give a credit card for a trial. You can find trials that are free without giving your credit card. But keeping your costs down is basically, as a business owner, you have to keep your finger on the pulse, right? You have to know where your expenses are. And when you sign up for something, have a document. I remember working with a client and I had a running document of all the apps that we were spending. And, you're paying yearly, but it may come off monthly, or it may come, you can calculate it monthly, and it does add up. So you really have to keep your finger on the pulse and have documentation in the cloud about, where you're spending your money and where it's going. And if you don't need an app, if you're not using an app, is only as good as your willingness to commit to using it. If you are not committed to using it, if you are not actually getting the best out of it, stop using it. See what you're missing. Use that as a place to jump off in your search for your next app. Stop using it. You're just spending money, and it's a shame.
I think Willem, this is somewhere where an accountant can add huge value. So classifying that correctly into your accounting system and potentially providing reporting on this is your app stack, or this is your and these are the costs that's going there, and doing regular reviews of those licenses. It's similar to watching your petrol spend and watching your marketing spend and reviewing that. I think what happens sometimes, it happened in my business, where that gets misaligned or misassigned in your accounting platform, and then the waters get murky and you don't know where your money's going. So I think accountants has a huge role to play. There's an app, I use an app to manage my and my clients' stacks. It's called AppBind. It provides really good support, reporting on app licenses, and it also gives you a great way of managing credentials and things like that. So there's an app for that. It's my answer.
That's a good takeaway for today. There's an app for it. And so, yeah, I think that should be useful. And if I can add another dimension to this discussion, one should not go and use an app unless it solves a very specific problem in your business. And so I think once one understands the pain that you are feeling and what pain you are trying to solve, that spend is no longer a cost. It's actually an investment. It's an integral part of the cost structure to ensure that your business is running. And as a matter of fact, in my own business, I consider the majority of the apps that I use almost as employees. That's how I view it. And so in determining my margin on my sales, the majority of my apps are actually part of my margin. So it's not an overhead for me. It's an integral part of me enabling me to execute my business. Otherwise, I can't operate without the apps.
Yeah, absolutely. The apps that you're using, if you've built your tech stack, just to tie into the beginning, if you've built your tech stack correctly, they are employees. They are doing, especially if you're doing integrations and automations, they're doing the work of a VA and a data entry intern or whatever, right? So they're doing a lot of that work for you, and they should be treated as such. And I think because there's so many apps out there, we have this overflow in our mind, and we're like, oh yeah, we'll just get this other app and I'll just download this to my phone. And it slows down your phone or whatever, your computer, if you're downloading anything. So that's just a downside. But also, if you're not using them, they're just filling up space. Plus you have guilt that I'm paying for this and I'm not using this. And, just make it like you would hire an employee, like search for something that is giving you added value to your business, and not do it just because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I can't add to that. That's great. Thanks for that. I see Zvico is also making a comment about costs. They've got an e-commerce setup. They're using Zapier, a few WordPress plugins, and the monthly costs are starting to add up. What's the best way to make sure that you optimize automation options and have a custom built site that does these tasks? It sounds like something you guys can answer very well.
Core, go ahead. I can talk. I can do this, but I'm just going to talk all the time. So,
I think it's what we said. So it's a business case, right? And what are these tasks that we're automating? It has to be more valuable than it costs. I have a business improvement background, and our bottom line was, if I don't save you more money than I'm costing you, the best improvement you can make is get rid of me. So the same applies for an app. If it's not saving or making you more money than it's saving you, change it.
I just want to say, for this specific case, the WooCommerce to Zapier and WordPress plugins, there's so many different routes. I was just doing this for a client last week. There's so many different routes that you can take to integrate WordPress plugins and payment processing and accounting and whatever. Find a route that works for you with your tools. There's no one right way to do it, but when you build the automation properly, like Cor said, it should be saving you money, and it should be costing you less using those tools than costing you to use them, basically.
Cost versus benefit, as the accountants would like to say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's do one more question, and then I want to ask you guys for some final comments there. Finally, please consider robotic automation for manual processes. What's your view on this? Cor.
So briefly, maybe for everybody on the call, so there's a technology called RPA, or robotic process automation, which what they basically do is they install a little robot on your computer or on a server, and you would teach that little robot. So the application doesn't have a data means of getting into the data that sits in the back end. You can then teach that robot to click there, type this, click there, select this, hit enter there. And so it's literally teaching the robot what that is. My personal view, I always try and find newer generation apps that fulfill the same role. I think it's got better longevity. It's going to last longer. I feel like if you're working with unless you're a bank or insurance or something where you just can't rip out that technology. But I try and default and find something that is a newer breed of technology that can then allow me to speak to the back end rather than go through a robot and teach it to do the moves.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. I want to start with you again, Cor, and then I'm going to ask Ira to say the final words. What is your final words of wisdom that you want the participants to leave it today? Cor first, and then Ira, your turn.
I'm a fan of staying flexible. I'm a fan of try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. Try. Play with something. If you don't have time to play, find somebody in your business to play. Give them the permission to play, and figure stuff out. Just try stuff and learn.
Yeah, I love the idea of playing and trying. I know not everybody is into that. Not everybody's up for that. People don't like technology sometimes. I always say, my clients are like, oh, this just gives me a headache. Just take it away from me. I don't want to do this. And I totally respect that. And that's why Cor and I do what we do, because we do love it. But if you want to do it yourself, start small. Like, I wouldn't jump and bring on 4 different apps at once. Start with one app. We talked about where you would start and search, whatever's right for your workflow, whatever's right for your company. Get buy-in. I had a client say, we've tried Monday, we've tried Trello, we've tried Asana, we don't like any of them. And then later on in the conversation, it was like, well, I didn't really like it. I didn't commit to using it. So nobody on the team did. So commit to any app that you're going to use to a point. As long as it's working for you, commit to it. And when it's no longer working for you, then know that it's time to break away.
Fantastic. And so for me, the message is just start somewhere. So long as you guys start, get that digital transformation sorted for your business so you can operate in the cloud, make yourself future-proof, and focus on what really matters: sales, profit, cash flow. Guys, thanks so much for today. Irit, Cor, I appreciate it. It was lovely chatting with you guys.
The biggest challenge we face, like most of our clients and many other businesses out there, is number one, access to cash. We connected with LulaLend. It was extremely easy to get approval, and the very next day, the cash was in the bank. I would recommend LulaLend because they just get it.
Dex Prepare. Make bookkeeping more profitable. Prepare your accounts automatically. Hours saving software to automatically fetch all your business data into one single view. Connect to over 1,400 suppliers to automatically fetch invoices, statements and bills. Dex Prepare.
Right, time to send my invoices.
Take control of business with our financial tools.